Is sustainability just a trend, or is it the future of business? And how can we tell the difference between genuine environmental commitment and greenwashing? We're living in an era where businesses are increasingly considering environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, factors in their decisions. A shift that's painting a greener picture of the corporate world. But as this trend grows, so does a deceptive practice known as greenwashing. Greenwashing, for those who are unfamiliar, is when a company or an organization spends more time and money claiming to be green through advertising and marketing than actually implementing business practices that minimize environmental impact. It's a kind of illusion, a mirage that confuses the public and investors about what is truly sustainable. So as we navigate through this green revolution, the question remains: how can we differentiate between those genuinely committed to sustainability and those merely painting themselves green for show? Let's dive deeper into what these ESG trends mean and how we can differentiate between real commitment and mere greenwashing. To understand the environmental impact of a business, we need to grasp the concept of Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Let's start with Scope 1 emissions. These are direct emissions from owned or controlled sources. Picture a company that owns a factory. The smoke billowing out of the factory's chimneys? That's a Scope 1 emission. It's the most direct form of emission because it's produced right there on the spot from activities the company directly controls. Next, we have Scope 2 emissions. These are indirect emissions from the generation of purchased energy. Let's say our company buys power from a coal-fired power plant. The emissions from burning that coal don't come directly from the company's operations, but they're still a result of its activities. That's a Scope 2 emission. It's a step removed from the company's direct control, but it's still very much tied to its activities. Finally, there are Scope 3 emissions. These are all other indirect emissions that occur in a company's value chain. This includes everything from the emissions produced when the raw materials for the company's products are extracted and processed to the emissions generated when customers use and eventually dispose of the company's products. This is the broadest category of emissions, and it can be the hardest to measure. But it's also where some of the biggest opportunities for emission reductions lie. All three scopes of emissions are crucial to consider when evaluating a company's environmental impact. They offer a comprehensive view of not just what a company is directly responsible for, but also the broader implications of its activities. This includes the energy it consumes, the materials it uses, and the life cycle of its products. By understanding Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, we gain a more holistic understanding of a company's environmental footprint. This allows us to make more informed decisions about which companies are truly contributing to a more sustainable future, and which ones might just be talking a big game. Understanding these emissions is the first step towards realizing the full environmental impact of a business. New regulations in California are set to have a significant impact on the market. This sunny state, known for setting the pace in environmental legislation, has been at it again, ushering in a new era of regulatory measures aimed at curbing emissions. Firstly, let's talk about the Cap-and-Trade program. This innovative system sets a limit on greenhouse gas emissions while enabling companies to buy and sell emission allowances. It's not just a way to minimize emissions, but also a method to stimulate green innovation. By making carbon a traded commodity, it provides an economic incentive for businesses to reduce their carbon footprint. Next up, we have the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. This regulation encourages the production and use of cleaner, low-carbon fuels. It's a significant push towards reducing the carbon intensity of transportation fuels used in California, signaling a shift away from fossil fuels towards more sustainable alternatives. Then we have SB 100, a law that mandates a 100% carbon-free electricity grid by 2045. This is a bold move that sends a clear message to the energy sector. The future is renewable. It's a call to action for utilities, power producers, and investors to focus on clean energy sources. These regulations aren't just about reducing emissions. They're about reshaping the market, driving innovation, and creating opportunities for businesses that are ready to embrace sustainability. For instance, the shift towards renewable energy sources opens up a new market for solar and wind energy providers. The Low Carbon Fuel Standard creates a demand for biofuels, electric vehicles, and other sustainable transport solutions. It's clear that businesses operating in California will need to adapt to these new regulations or risk being left behind. The forward-looking ones are already seeing this not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to innovate and lead the way towards a sustainable future. These regulations are a clear indication that sustainability is not just a trend, but a business imperative. Companies that recognize this will be the ones that thrive in this new market landscape. As for those that don't, well, let's just say the sun might be setting on them sooner than they think. With increased scrutiny and regulations, companies will find it increasingly difficult to greenwash their practices. Greenwashing, the practice of making misleading or unsubstantiated claims about the environmental benefits of a product, service, or company, has been a go-to strategy for many businesses. However, the tides are turning. More and more, customers, investors, and regulators are demanding transparency and authenticity, and this is making it increasingly tough for companies to greenwash their practices. Let's take a moment to appreciate the power of awareness. In the age of information, consumers and investors are more informed than ever. They're not just looking at glossy brochures or catchy slogans. They're digging deeper, scrutinizing a company's environmental, social, and governance, or ESG practices. They're looking at a company's carbon footprint, its waste management policies, and its commitment to social responsibility. They're well aware that a truly sustainable company doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk. Now let's add regulators to this mix. In places like California, new regulations are being put in place that demand companies to disclose their environmental impact in a comprehensive and honest way. This includes details about their Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which cover all direct and indirect emissions from a company's activities. These regulations are not just about paperwork. They carry significant consequences for non-compliance, including hefty fines and reputational damage. In other words, it's becoming too risky and costly for companies to greenwash. Furthermore, greenwashing is not just about the environment. It's about trust. When a company greenwashes, it's betraying the trust of its customers and investors. And in today's interconnected world, trust is a valuable commodity that once lost is hard to regain. So what does all this mean? It means that businesses are being pushed towards genuine sustainability. They're being encouraged to not just reduce their environmental impact, but to actively contribute to a more sustainable world. Greenwashing is no longer a viable strategy in the face of informed consumers and stringent regulations. It's time for companies to embrace the fact that sustainability is not just a buzzword, it's a business imperative. The ESG factors are accelerating the transition to a sustainable future. Environmental, social, and governance factors, or ESG for short, are becoming the new norm in the business world. They are reshaping the landscape, pushing companies towards more sustainable practices. Think of it as a compass guiding corporations towards their true north, a sustainable future. Let's start with the E in ESG, environmental factors. Companies around the globe are making strides in reducing their carbon footprint. This isn't just about good PR, it's about survival. With the increasing threat of climate change and new regulations like those in California, businesses are realizing that sustainability is not optional. It's a must for long-term viability. Next up, we have social factors. This is all about how companies manage relationships with their employees, suppliers, customers, and the communities where they operate. It's about ensuring fair labor practices, promoting diversity and inclusion, and protecting human rights. Companies that excel in these areas are more likely to attract and retain top talent, foster customer loyalty, and maintain a positive reputation. Finally, we arrive at governance factors. Good governance is about transparency, ethical conduct, and effective management. It's about holding the company's leadership accountable and ensuring they're making decisions that benefit all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Companies with strong governance are more likely to be trusted by investors, employees, and customers. Now you might be wondering, what does this mean for various industries and the economy as a whole? Well, it's a game changer. Industries that have traditionally been heavy polluters, like manufacturing and energy, are being forced to innovate and adopt cleaner technologies. This is not only good for the environment, but also creates new opportunities for growth and job creation. On a broader scale, ESG factors are driving a shift in the global economy. They're encouraging investment in sustainable businesses and industries, which in turn helps to fuel economic growth. Plus, they're helping to mitigate risks associated with climate change, social inequality, and corporate scandals. But it's not just about the big corporations. Small and medium-sized enterprises are also feeling the ESG effect. They're realizing that adopting sustainable practices can give them a competitive edge, attract investment, and ensure their long-term survival. Let's not forget the role of consumers in all of this. As awareness of environmental and social issues grows, consumers are increasingly choosing brands that align with their values. They're demanding more from businesses, more transparency, more accountability, and more sustainability. And companies that fail to meet these expectations risk being left behind. In conclusion, ESG factors are not just buzzwords. They're powerful drivers of change, pushing businesses of all sizes and across all industries towards a more sustainable future. They're helping to create an economy that's not only more resilient but also more equitable and just. It's clear that sustainability is not just a trend but the future of business, and with ESG factors driving the shift, we can look forward to a more sustainable future.